Okay, so the other day, one of my good friends asked me, Maddie, how do you choose lenses? Like, how do you choose the lenses for each film? What does that decision come from? And I thought that was a really good question. No one has really asked me that, and I feel like I've never answered that like I want to answer it in this video. So, first and foremost, we're going to talk about how you can choose lenses and why you choose certain lenses over the others. And I just want to kick off the discussion of how I, myself, go about choosing lenses on the projects that I have worked on and how I think other cinematographers may choose lenses. We're not going to hit everything that you may know or may be thinking about. This is just an opener to the conversation. So it's up to you all who are watching this to come back with more questions so that we can dive deeper into certain lenses, why you would use this lens over that lens, aspect ratio, t-stop, f-stop, all of these lovely questions you may be having. I would love to start off the conversation now. So first and foremost, how do you even think about choosing lenses? There's a lot of lenses. There's vintage lenses, modern lenses, and then anamorphic lenses, which I want to categorize in a separate area. So with all of these choices, the story is really what's going to drive that decision. Now, if you're working backwards and you're choosing the story to fit the lenses, it doesn't work that way. It should be the lenses fit the story. So every creative decision that I've ever made when choosing lenses have all originated from the story. What is the story asking for? What is the story telling me and the director? How do we want to capture this? Again, there's so many lenses, of course, but to really summarize this entire video, it all comes down to the story. So like we identified earlier, there are a lot of different types of lenses. You have the vintage lenses, which are really lenses that are older, that have been made 20 years ago, 30 years ago, possibly even longer than that. You've seen them in old films. They have been around, and now in the 2020s, as I'm recording this, they are now vintage. They have certain characteristics that modern lenses just don't have. Now, some of those characteristics are lens breathing. Like, how does the lens focus? Does it shift and move? Does it zoom in as you are focusing, which is known as breathing? Is it a softer image? Maybe not as sharp as modern lenses can be. And I just want to say really quickly that sharper is not better. Sharper is not more cinematic. The more detail and the more pleasing a lens can make an image look, that's closer to cinematic to me. And it doesn't mean that it's bad or that it's good. It's just I want to make sure that you know that there's a difference between sharper lenses and lenses that are more clean, that are more detailed. Because yes, not every lens is as sharp or as clean as the others. Also, vintage lenses may have a particular lens flare. Is it something that is speaking to the story? Now, let me go back. Things like breathing, lens breathing, again, like I said, with focus shifting and zooming in and zooming out, that may speak to the story. There's also this thing called chromatic aberration, which is really just when things are in focus, you get like these purple and green colors that are just always present in an image. If you're looking in areas that are out of focus, you will notice them, and sometimes even when they are in focus. So that's chromatic aberration. Again, do these things, the characteristics of each lens, of these vintage lenses, does it speak to the story? Is it saying something that the character is also saying, but in a visual way? That's one reason why you would probably use vintage lenses. Maybe all of these reasons. Now, let's take a look at some modern lenses. You've seen probably some of these movies, and if you're wondering why it just look so clean and so nice, it's because they're a little bit more modern. The glass is a little bit newer. The coatings on the lenses, on the glass within the lens, are slightly different, maybe more modified, maybe more neutral, and you're just getting images that have less character, or maybe more character than vintage lenses do themselves in certain areas. So again, think back to the story. Does the story scream out? It needs to be a bit more focused, meaning there's not much chromatic aberration, there's not much focus breathing, you don't have much softness, it's more clear, it's more detailed, more crisp. Then modern lenses will probably go best for your story. If that's not the case, again, maybe vintage lenses is the way to go. Now, modern lenses may flare differently as well. They have different characteristics that you may like a lot more than vintage lenses. And it goes without saying, modern lenses, vintage lenses, and then we're going to get to anamorphics. They are all built differently. They weigh different. The size of them are different. The colors of them are different. The aperture within the lens is very different. So those are also like more technical things that will help you tell your story better. And then last but not least, I wanted to categorize anamorphic lenses slightly different because one, I haven't used them quite yet. And then two, they are also made in vintage style and flavors, and also more modern anamorphic lenses that you can use today. So let's kind of jump into that. And again, let's think about how story is going to drive all of these creative decisions. And say you want to land on a frame where your characters seem really far apart, or your world just feels very involved with your character. Anamorphic lenses will give you the height of what the lens says. If we're shooting on a 50 anamorphic lens, up and down, your vertical is going to be a 50. But when you go right to left, the frame is much longer. It's actually around a 25 millimeter if we're using a 2x squeeze anamorphic lens. So again, what is your story asking for? What is your story saying? You have to understand the fundamental story first, and then from that, the creative decisions on which lenses that you want to use, like these anamorphic ones, will come into fruition. They will just magically appear. And you'll probably look like a genius when you choose the lenses that you choose, because you've done your homework. You've figured out what the story is telling you, so that you and the director can now agree that, you know what, I think anamorphics are going to work perfect for this story because X, Y, Z. So there you have it. Again, this is just an introduction to this entire conversation, this one question, singular question that my friend asked me yesterday. And it made me really think and want to just share my thought process on how I think about choosing lenses. Again, I can only speak for myself. So if you have other ways, other methods, other processes of how to choose lenses, let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you have any questions about lenses and about why you would use one over the other, or what chromatic aberration really means, and can we dive deeper into that, this is the time for you to drop that comment, because the next video, or maybe the next one, whatever, I may be able to just expand on that. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully doing that and just starting this conversation of how cinematographers choose their lenses.